moniker at FITTV is divorce is about relationships, and relationships cannot be adjudicated. Doesn't that make sense? Also true is that difficulty is placed upon a system of adjudication of the mentally impaired when in court. How can any system be fair and balanced with the mentally challenged? This is the focus of our show today. What can you expect your loved one with a challenge to face in court with the judge's decision minus a firm basis for success in that area? The topic is civil courts with uncivilized minds. What do you do when you can't talk to somebody in a civil way with intelligence and find the true place that a decision can be made? Let's start with you. This is Gary Jacobs, President for Americans for Legal Reform, and of course a family law reformer.
Well, Chris, thanks for having me to discuss this. This comes up a lot because as President of Americans for Legal Reform, we get a lot of calls from litigants, and I'm talking more in the family court than in the criminal court, but right. Of course a lot of mental illness in the criminal courts.
Probably
they seem
more.
to deal with it a little bit better in the trial because there's the defense of insanity, temporary insanity. Problem is, it's another issue of what we do with these people.
And a clear conviction possibility.
Once they're convicted, what do we do now? We take these people and stick them in jail. But one of the issues that I run into a lot is in the context of a divorce, when one of the parties, the mother or the father, has mental illness. And I see it a lot. It really comes up a lot. But one of the things that I've learned over the 15 years I've been doing this.
By the way, you can discern the differences pretty easily, can't you?
Well, I've gotten pretty good at it. But
yeah. I mean,
I'm not a trained
we see a lot of this stuff, and you get familiar with it.
But one of the things I find interesting, it comes up so much, is there a higher percentage in divorce court and family court of people that suffer mental illness? But what I've come to the conclusion is that, first of all, our minds are fragile. We see what can happen with brainwashing, parental alienation, post-traumatic stress disorder. So you go through a stressful situation like a divorce, which for many people...
Which might make you act a little abnormal.
Right, but for many people, this is the most traumatic experience they've ever experienced in their life.
Exactly.
People equate it to going to war, to cancer, to losing a loved one. So this sometimes pushes them over this edge. That's number one. Number two, the protracted cases. When you have a case that drags... Listen, our bodies are designed that stress can be good, right? In a short period of time, stress is good. The adrenaline, it does things for our body, makes us think better, but our bodies are not meant to handle long-term stress. They could do it for a month, 2 months, 3 months.
That's
they can't take stress
I agree.
for 1 year, 2 years, some cases 5 years, 10 years of going to court every month. People are looking at the possibility of losing their children. So what happens? I want to say they go crazy, for lack of a better term, but a mental illness would often either come to the surface or maybe be created. I don't know enough about mental illness to know if it was there and now this brought it out, or if it developed it. But either way, it's there. What's there? Depression. Now, I've had a lot of people say, "Oh my God, I'm depressed. I can't even deal with my case. I show up to court, I'm not prepared with my paperwork." And there's two different kinds of depression as I see it. There's a situational depression, which is, hey, you know what? I was depressed going through my divorce. I went to a psychologist and I said, I need drugs. Give me Prozac. Give me something to get me over this pain of what's happening to my children. And the psychologist said, Gary, this is normal. This is a situational depression, and I can't do anything for it because it should be there. It wouldn't be normal if you weren't depressed.
Right.
But then when it develops into a clinical depression where there's suicide, you can't sleep.
You know what happens when you can't rationalize or you can't make sense of what's going on while you're going on it? A simple depression can easily complicate itself into a more complicated depression.
And then what happens is when you're depressed, so now you go to court, and that depression paralyzes you.
Sure.
So now the judge abuses you more because you're depressed. And we've seen this with really smart people. We have doctors who go, lawyers who go through it, and they're depressed, and they're like, "You're a doctor. You must be a smart man."
They don't even respond right.
Why are you showing up? And then they're paralyzed. So that's another big thing that we see is the depression. Another thing that tends to come out is narcissists, antisocial personality disorder, and I think a lot of people, maybe that's why they ended up in the court, because one of their spouses is a narcissist. Is a sociopath, is a pathological liar, and they deal with it. But now they're in court and they're being challenged, and this just comes out and it makes it worse. Interestingly enough, though, a narcissist is very good doing this. They know how to act the right way.
And they also don't feel the pain as much as
There is
somebody
no,
with
as
a
much.
there's no conscience.
I don't think they feel it in many cases, but they know how to act like they do. They cry to their friends, oh, it sucks, it's horrible. But
Manipulators.
but what they do is they get a therapist aligned with them because they're very convincing. The other party is going, how could this happen? They're upset that nobody, what happened, here's a perfect example. You're married to a narcissist. They go to the therapist, and the therapist comes back and says, well, just because it's me, I'll say the wife seems like she's a great mother, she's a caring mother, and the husband's going, what the hell is this woman talking about? My wife is a sociopath, she's a narcissist, and the therapist and the piece of crap law guardian who's not trained, who's a lawyer, who's the judge's puppet, goes along with what they say. Now this poor guy is going, oh my God, now they believe this person and I'm getting hurt by it. That pushes them further into depression. So what do? Many times they lash out. And they go, God damn it, they pissed off. And they go, see?
Yeah.
This is why I act like this. He's a violent man. Look at him.
So he set himself up.
He has no self-control.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm losing my voice today. But that's one of the things, and then it just multiplies. But there are some severe mental illness problems that in a custody battle really scare me. And one is bipolar disorder.
That's what they used
Manic
to call
depression, I think, or
obsessive compulsive.
is it bipolar now or well, I'm not sure what
Yeah.
but it's when there's there's highs
Bipolar.
and there's lows. Again, this gets triggered even more when you're going through a divorce, right? But I say, and some of these judges treat people with these disorders cruelly, and I say, if the person had cancer, would you treat them like that?
Yeah.
Would you abuse them in the court and say, you've got cancer, you can't see your kid anymore? Now, let's be honest. You don't want somebody who's dangerous to a child.
I see that happen often. The judges take this authority position and make the person that they're speaking to, one of the litigants, they reduce them immediately, make them feel submissive, and remove their ability to effectuate a decent conversation.
Right, which exactly
it's never going to happen.
Happens all that goes into what I call the legal abuse syndrome.
Yeah.
You know, it's not always a spouse; it's the judge. First, you know, they treat you like
like
garbage.
crap.
They talk down. You know, you're going through a horrible stage in your life. Usually, one of the parties doesn't even want to be there.
I'd like to see where judges school really shows you how to do that.
They lose their humanity. But I think it's important to talk when you're talking about a mental illness that the person could be putting a child in danger. When I say you shouldn't treat them cruelly, you shouldn't treat them cruelly. They shouldn't have their parental rights stripped. But you have to be smart and say, look, because a lot of times they ignore the mental illness. And they'll put somebody who's a narcissist or a bipolar disorder because they're behaving in court. And they'll say, take the kid. You know,
I think it's time for us to start a school, teach people how to behave in court.
Destroy. Listen, if somebody's got mental illness, first, don't let them destroy the spouse's life. Don't destroy. You know, look, I don't like EAC, which is a supervised visitation in a county setting. It's a disgusting place. It's a moneymaker. It's a jail. It sends a message to the children that the parent who's getting
supervised visitation.
Yeah. But I believe in supervised visit in cases of mental illness where the person's a danger, where there's severe parental alienation, and they can't stop one parent from alienating. But I don't believe it. I think EAC should be the absolute last resort.
Right.
It really should, because and there's many reasons. First of all, you're watching somebody's mentally ill. Usually they can behave for an hour when they're in EAC. You know what? That's not being a parent. Let them be supervised by a family member.
Behave intelligently in an environment like that? I always call it parenting in a box, because you're really just sitting there trying to behave in a way that they want you to behave. It's outside my normal way of thinking. How am I going to do that? What do I have to do? Act? Do I have to learn how to perform?
And I tell people, they go, well, my spouse, the wife, say, went to EAC, and the judge said they got a great report from EAC. The lawyer goes in and he tells, look,
makeup.
When you go into EAC with your child for 1 hour, all I want you to do is tell them you love them, tell them they're doing great.
Yeah. So you have to know what they're expecting.
You pretend for an hour. You come out, you get a good EAC. That doesn't mean you're a good parent. You don't know if you're cooking for the kid. You're not taking them to the bathroom. The kid's not.
Which
getting
you'll never
upset.
see in that environment
it's
anyway.
Not the right. It's a ridiculous environment. It's also hard to get out of.
How does a judge make a decision? And they're probably not making a decision on this topic. That's why this topic is important. As to whether the person can affect parenting without having to be reduced in some way by either EAC or by a forensic evaluator or something. How does a judge?
Well, that's a great question. Glad you asked it. But really, and this brings it back to the whole thing that Americans for Legal Reform fights for, which is the presumption of shared parenting.
Which
a judge can't make a decision who's mentally ill, because listen, as Carl Lancezera, the founder of Americans for Legal Reform, he says, we're all a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
Right? In our own
Who's
way.
totally normal?
We're all different. And this is just a spectrum. So do I want the judge to... I'll give you a perfect example. We advocated for a man in court. We're on cable, so I'm going to say, for lack of a better terms, the guy's an asshole. I'm not going to deny that he's an asshole, but he's an intelligent person and he loves his children. And the judges destroyed this man in court. Everybody hated him because of the way he acted. And they said he deserved it. Did he deserve to lose his kids, lose his life, lose his career?
Where's the balance there?
If there was a presumption of shared parent, let the kids figure it out. You know what? Maybe him being an asshole would teach his kids, I don't want to be like my father.
Right.
I want to be a better person than my father.
I always say that a certain amount of arguing, a certain amount of conflict is not necessarily the worst thing that can happen. You can take two parents, male and female, who argue, and they argue differently. Is one person going to have a superior arguing ability that we want to measure? Is one person going to have an inferior arguing ability that we want to measure? I can tell you it's not matter. The kid's going to look at that as, maybe this time I'll get what mom is saying, and maybe next time I'll get what dad is saying.
And look how many people grow
up. And
up.
I'm going to learn in that process, and that's what's going to happen.
Look how many people grow up in adversity. Look at the President Obama, right?
Sure.
He grew up when his father left when he was young, or I don't remember. He didn't grow up with his father. He was raised by his grandmother. He certainly didn't grow up in a traditional, wonderful family.
Right.
You know, maybe if he was going to custody court, somebody would have lost. Maybe the mother would have lost custody because she didn't have a good household. Grew up in Africa, Hawaii, wherever the hell he grew up.
Moving around.
But look, he became president of the United States through adversity. He turned it into something positive. People grow up in bad neighborhoods sometimes.
Well, a long time ago, I forgot her name. I think it was like Lowenstein or something like that. She came up with this program about pursuing the ineffective parent or the loud and screaming parent that got tied up with the domestic violence people. I can't remember her name now. It's not important. The point is that it set in motion a target of in a divorce as one parent being not insufficient and the other one being better.
Right.
I think when we started that, we kind of locked in sole custody, didn't we?
Right. And I got let's go back to mental illness, what we talked about with the show. Maybe to some extent, in my opinion, a child having a relationship with that father or mother who is mentally ill, maybe in some instances may be healthy.
Sure.
Because they'll see that, hey, not everybody is the same. You know, that doesn't mean that parent can't offer love.
That's right.
And I'm not saying they could take that. Listen, they can't take the kid home. Maybe they can't. Maybe do overnights. Maybe they can't drive with the child. But they could spend time maybe with another adult who's responsible at the park.
How many times have you heard a parent say to you, like I kept them aside. I don't want them seeing the kid. And I've got the kid, and I'm going to secure the kid. Blah 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 blah. And all of a sudden, the kid gets to be 14. Discovers who the father is or the mother, whatever the case may be, and they go, I think I'm going to move in with this guy because you drove me crazy. You drove me crazy. Or whatever the reason is.
I think even if a parent's mentally ill, sometimes children learn that they have to care.
That's the alienation. They pick up that right away. In those kinds of situations, alienation is common. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I was thinking, sometimes if the parent has mental illness, the child will sometimes learn to help care for that parent, and that makes them a more loving, caring
individual as they grow.
Who knows? It's all part of the process. Listen, we don't know what's right.
Right.
We don't know what's right, what's wrong.
But somehow the judges know this.
Well, they shouldn't. That's why it's crazy to put it in that position.
I wouldn't want to have that person be in charge of making that decision with my kid.
If there is mental illness, you need a real mental health professional, not one of these jokes of a law guardian who tries to act like they know what they're doing. There are doctors.
What a mistake that is, right? A lawyer can be a sub-parent.
But again, if we find out that a parent is diagnosed with one of these mental illnesses, deal with it in a humane way.
The system is deciding sloppy, and forensic evaluators are called in to help to decide the judge. So for me, if a judge is going to have trouble making that decision, that makes sense to me. What makes a forensic evaluator suddenly better?
Right.
I don't see any of the steps that the court takes to try to either decide custody or decide where mental illness is or isn't.
Right. Well, it goes back. First of all, I've met a few forensic evaluators. Some are very good. In fact, here on Long Island, we have a couple. Just from my experience, Dr. Anthony Santoro, Dr. Barbara Burkhardt,
and I'm sure that there'd be plenty of people to complain about some of them too.
Jen Campbell. There are some very good ones that have learned to do this, but you're asking them again to, because somebody may suffer mental illness. What does that mean? Does that mean they should never see the kids?
Yeah.
I mean, forget about this presumption of winning and losing. You got to get, and
That's
listen,
right.
somebody
And
get
that's
some
what
help.
it is. It's adversarial law.
Get away from this winning and losing. And the only time, to me, these forensics should be used is if somebody believes that they're a danger to the child. For example, a bipolar disorder or a severe drug
Physical
addict.
abuse.
Physical,
Something
of course,
serious.
Of course.
Yeah.
But to say, well, is this person bordering on sociopathy, narcissist? First of all, it's very difficult. Sometimes it takes months of evaluation to determine really, because I have to tell
especially
you,
a narcissist.
Chris, you know it as well.
Yeah.
I was married to a sociopath. It is not an easy. I didn't know it for years being married to her
Right.
that she was a socio. I didn't know the name of it. I knew something was wrong years into my divorce. I didn't know there was a name for it until the forensic exam said. Well, actually, it was a psychologist before that said, "Hey, this is a sociopath," and I Googled it. I said, "Oh my God, this is my." But I didn't know what it was. So I'm saying it takes years to figure these things. I got lucky that I had a good evaluator, or two good evaluators who nailed it. But it could have got past, and I would have been a victim again of this narcissist or sociopath.
I always say that the system has a way of creating a lot of this definition the need to define where we are and who we are. If the system is going to do that, and you're not prepared for it, like kind of like the example you just gave me with your own situation, you're married for a while, you didn't need to have the definer.
Right.
And it wasn't necessary until suddenly something
And again,
happened.
I was willing, as bad as it was, I was willing to share custody, but the courts wouldn't have it.
Well, New York State, of course, doesn't have a joint custody
So
law.
that was ridiculous. They should let the kids figure. I figure when my kids get older, they'll figure it out. But because of this adversarial system, which is not what the topic of the show is about,
That's okay, but it helps,
again, you get into
helps to know the derivation of some
well, you
of
get
this
into
stuff.
alienation, which, in my
Sure.
opinion, not an expert on parental alienation syndrome, is that it's done by people with mental illness. A normal, caring, loving parent usually will not turn into an alienator, and an alienator will not normally be successful if their target is a narcissist, for example. So the person that they're trying to alienate usually has to be a good person. What I see is it's usually
with a conscience.
It's usually a nice man or a nice woman
with
who's
a
loving
conscience,
and will not fight back because they want to do the right thing, and they're the people who get victimized by the judge, by the lawyers,
and by the
narcissistic alienating parent.
You reflect on some of the situations that we've seen I've seen plenty of them, where someone commits suicide.
So, yeah, we both seen it. We just had a tragedy last year. Last year we had somebody who slit their throat in a divorce, and you and I both know somebody who tried twice to commit suicide unsuccessfully, but once took pills and once put a gun in his mouth. Thank God he didn't succeed, and we helped him work through this. But it's tragic. So
to be in that place where the thought of either taking drugs to potentially kill yourself is a lot. A lot of it is the responsibility falls on the court system.
Absolutely.
To me. So the tie-in, right? They have blood on their hands. Right?
We had somebody served in the Army, Rich McGinty. After 9/11, he volunteered to go and fight in Iraq. Frontline gunner, 2 tours, fought for our country. Came back and was alienated, and the judge told him because he was suffering PTSD, he couldn't see his daughter. And he came to me and he said, "Gary."
And he was a very normal guy.
Normal guy. He did suffer PTSD, but he said, "Gary, as bad as it was having people trying to shoot me and kill me, this family court and somebody taking away my daughter and the way I'm being treated, I would rather be on the front line having somebody pointing a gun and trying to kill me." What does that say? That's inhumane.
Sure. It makes it odd for all of us to try to think of trying to find a normal place in life when...
Stay the hell out of court.
Well, that's what we always say, right? Mediate, don't litigate.
That's right. Stay out of court, and you know what? Hold these judges responsible for the misery that they're causing on people.
I find a great amount of comfort knowing that the families that did see me in mediation over the 14 years that I'm doing this really have not had any relitigation rates. Right. Nobody ever hurt each other. They've all quietly gone away in their own worlds, sharing the custody. And by the way, the joint custody is almost automatic in mediation.
Right.
It's almost automatic. Everybody wants it. So they go to get a peaceful settlement, means they're at peace to begin with. Some of these people are at war, and there's a certain amount of mental illness we can tie to, I'm at war with that woman or that man. And that might be mental illness. That's part of the narcissist. And what else? Oppositional defiant. People that are oppositionally defiant will have personality disorders.
Narcissists, psychopaths.
When you recognize it in your wife, but before you were married, you didn't recognize it existed.
Listen, I'm not trained in psychology.
No, but I'll bet you any money you're just as normal as anybody else.
And narcissists know how to. I'm bringing up narcissists a lot because we see a lot of narcissistic personality disorder in divorce court, because those are the people who tend to drag these cases on and bring them towards a trial,
alienate.
and alienate. Somebody, you have two loving parents who don't suffer mental illness. They're going to fight, but they're going to work it out at some point.
So what would you do? Let's say, for instance, you were able to write the bill that would change the situation.
Well, again, it would be the presumption of shared parenting, and then it would be, so the presumption of shared parenting, you always have to be able to go to court if you think there's a danger to the child. And if there is a danger, and we have a real psychologist, a doctor, somebody trained in psychology, find out that, hey, there is mental illness, this person is a danger to their child, treat them humanely. Don't say, okay, now you're in EAC for 1 hour a week, because that's detrimental to the child too. You know what, if somebody is suffering from mental illness and they can't care for the child, they can't drive with the child, so have them in an environment where there's a family member or friend there to watch, as normal as you can, to transition till the child gets older, because this isn't going to last forever. Listen, a 10 or a 12-year-old kid can go with a parent who's mentally ill. They're old enough to call for help. They're old enough to know when something's wrong, and I think that helps them. You're not going to send a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old with somebody who goes crazy, and the kid who's 5 can't understand, why is my parent.
And one of my mediation reminded me of one of the mediations I had. I suggested the grandparent come into the session because there was a particularly close relationship. Two of the kids, the 2 kids were in that family. Both kids had with this grandparent, and the other one apparently deceased. But that relationship was so tight, and the divorce was creating a void that needed to be filled. So when the grandparent came in and told me about some of the problems that she was having with her own daughter, it explained to me why he wanted access and why she should be a part of the access plan.
Right.
You can't get that ordinarily in a court.
Absolutely, that's a great point, because you definitely need that, because they all want, listen, if it's a grandparent, they want to care for their child. And the thing with the courts is funny. I was just in court for somebody a week or 2 ago, and the judge kept saying, well, give me something that's recent. So what a stupid freaking argument for this judge. Is this guy born yesterday? And my feeling was...
What do you mean by that?
Well, the father hadn't seen the child in a year because of what he had done, because of mental illness, drug use, things like that. He goes, well, he hasn't been dangerous in the last year. And I said, well, if somebody gets a DWI, drunk with their kids in the car, arrested under Leandra's law, loses their license, can they go back to court in a year and say, hey, judge, I've been great for a year. I haven't driven in a year drunk. Well, you can't. You didn't have a freaking license. So that's stupid. Here's what I say all the time. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. If somebody suffers mental illness and goes in, listen, mental illness is a lifelong problem, and many times people get better, they take their medication, they feel great, but then because they feel great, they think they're better, they stop taking their medication, then they get worse, but then they're so bad they don't realize that.
I see a cycle going on here.
So it's a cycle, and if somebody's got a cycle of 10 or 15 years of falling in and out of mental illness, they're going to fall in and out of mental. Why wait to damage a child?
Well, what you just described, I never heard anybody talk about in a court, and I've witnessed a lot of things in court. They don't give it the time. I've experienced it a lot in court lately. So one of the things we could recommend, then, I'm just trying to overshoot where I can try to find a remedy of some kind, is to have an evaluation, a fair evaluation sooner about the history. I'm making this up
I think everything.
You know what I'm saying, though, right?
But I think if you are going to truly have a custody battle, everything needs to come in. I have to come in. It's a lifelong history.
Can you ask them to? Courts can't really ask them to separate, can it? To come out of court and separate and get out of court.
Well, I think my opinion is, again, they should call them up, and say, look, you got a lifelong history of this. If you make me decide you're going to lose custody, work out an agreement. Don't go, because putting people through this fight that's going to lose it. Listen, if somebody is bipolar, they're going to lose custody. They know they're going to lose custody. Why would they even go through this whole battle, which is going to exacerbate the situation?
I still find that tough, though. I appreciate what you're saying.
It's going to exacerbate the situation because they're going to go through the stress. Stress brings these things out. Just like these people that do drugs, right? Or alcohol. If you're an alcoholic and you're going through a divorce, they're going to drink. I mean, that's if any time is going to test you, it's going to be while you're going through
for sure
court. So isn't that a little bit cruel to say, well, we're going to drag it on as long as we can, waiting for? And I've told people to do it. They say, look, my husband is an alcoholic, but he's being good right now because we're in court. I say, my opinion, drag the damn court out. They'll be more than happy to drag it out for 5 years.
Yeah.
And eventually
At
they
a
get
great-
nailed,
at a
they
great
get drunk,
cost.
they come in, they get tested, case over. But why should you have to do this?
No, right.
It's
Exactly.
inhumane.
Right.
Get out of the court system.
The whole thing. Get out is
Get
exactly
out
right.
of the system. Don't let the judges need to stop it and say, enough is enough already. Let's share custody. Come up with an agreement. If the person is dangerous, come up with a plan and move forward.
Well, we finished the my note plan here, but as you were saying before, that the mental illness issue is common, and the system provides opportunity for us to place blame and mental illness on one of the litigants. The judges themselves don't want to be in this position. I'm trying to summarize the whole thing.
Should I mention that the judges many times suffer mental illness?
Oh, of course, and they're going to be influenced by
Family by their life experience. They have a brother, a sister, a father. But again, I mean, we can't gloss over the fact that in Suffolk County and Nassau County, many of the judges are mentally ill themselves. People who are attracted to this judgehood
Sure.
tend to be narcissists. We've said it over and over. You see these people like Aletha Fields. The woman's got something wrong with her. She's got to be mentally ill. I mean, I'm not a professional. In my opinion, this woman's crazy.
Is that the one who bumped into Lewandowski at the Trump thing? No, I don't know. Okay.
There's a woman in Suffolk County.
Okay.
Suffolk County Court, and the woman has to, because she treats people so cruelly. She has no empathy for people.
Yeah. We're in the last minute. So, summing up, once you sum up what we might do to advantage the court.
Well, again, in summary,
yeah.
Shared parenting, the presumption of shared parenting. Don't
And
put your life
mediate.
in the court.
Don't litigate. Don't get
Or
out
that's how
of
you
court.
get your shared parenting is the mediation. A lot of people say, I don't know, people think they know that they're mentally ill and they go, but I'm going to trick the courts. Don't take a chance that you're going to trick the court, because if you get a good evaluator, they're going to find out that you are they're getting very good at it.
That's right. It is a coin toss. We should remember when you're in court doing
Yeah.
whatever battle you got, you are subject to whatever they decide you were going to be.
Listen, as many in the last minute, people tell me, women come to me many times, sometimes more than men. They'll say, well, I'm going to fight because I want custody. And I'll say, well, you should do shared custody, blah, blah, blah. And they go, my lawyer told me that in Suffolk County, 90% of the time the mother wins custody. Let's just say it's 95% of the time. It's huge, right?
Yeah, right.
What
Who wants to take that risk? What if you're wrong?
You want to be one of the
And do you want to be on stage, right?
You want to be, because listen, women lose. You and I have had them on the show. Women lose custody. They do. Anybody who's watching this, women do lose custody.
They can lose
and
custody.
even if it's 5 or 10 in 100, for you
Right.
it's 100%.
Right,
If you're
right.
that woman who lost custody,
All
And
right.
don't take a chance, because it could.
That's right.
It happens. Men who abuse the women get custody.
Thanks, Gary Jacobs. I appreciate it. So stay out of court, mediate, don't litigate, and joint custody. Societal and political trends are rapidly breaking down the family that once was the cornerstone of our great American culture. At FIT, we know you cannot get this information on your own, so we'll bring it to your TV every single week. I'm in a hurry. My name is Chris DiMaggio. Thank you for watching FIT TV, and we'll see you again next week.